Hey, before we start the show, I just have a quick announcement to make. I went down to the Glacier Coal Pad, which is a do-it-yourself skate park just outside of Mount Baker, to meet with past guest and friend of the show, Jeff Fulton, who has a quick announcement regarding Damage Incorporated.
Well, Damage Incorporated is Jason Basarich's snowboard company. He's been doing this like out of pure love of his heart, basically, and real low production, and it's real grassroots oriented. He's building boards that are rider oriented boards that are built to last and hold up, and so when the kid goes out and buys a board, it's going to last him several seasons. It's not going to just be a one season board. He wants stuff that people can ride hard and they'll hold up.
Rad.
The other thing that's happening is I'm working with him right now, and we're doing a shape and the possibility of a model coming out this winter.
Dude, that's amazing.
Which, for me, is going to be really rad because I've never had a model.
Didn't you have one on Luxury or something?
No. I've never had a pro model ever. So this will be, after 30 years, I finally, so I guess it's one of those deals where if you have a dream, don't ever give up on it. And that's the truth. If you really do have a dream, something you really wanted, don't ever give up because it can happen.
Totally.
And to me, it's like I am super, super stoked that he approached me and made this offer to me. And, I'm just super pumped about it. And
that's fucking awesome.
Hopefully it all works out. It's like, the dude's a stand-up dude. He's fucking 100% hardcore. And he's just a stand-up, all-together good guy.
Yep.
He's out there for the right reasons.
Cool.
He's out there to put out boards. He doesn't care if he makes $1 or not. He's just out there because he loves snowboarding.
That's
I want to be behind something like that. Someone that's in there for
and
the
he
love
lives
of
close
it.
to here, right? Like he's local here.
His
forever.
whole life, yeah. He grew up riding Baker. Yeah.
That's amazing. Congratulations on getting a pro model. That's amazing.
Well, I don't call it a pro model.
Okay.
I'm
you're
not really
not pro
anymore.
Right. Getting
we call it a bro model.
Bro model. That's amazing.
Welcome to season 3 of the fucking Rad Snowboard Podcast.
Okay, perfect. 1 second, please.
Tala in ett meddelande efter tonen.
Hi, this is Sean. I'm not here right now.
You have reached Mike.
Hi, this is Jim. Leave me a message, and I will call you back as soon as I can.
Hi, you've reached Jeremy Jones.
Yeah, I'm going to call you back in 10. Sorry, dude.
Congratulations, Jeff. Super stoked you're getting a model this year on Damage Incorporated. And if you want to get a Damage board, you're going to have to talk to this week's guest, Jason Basarich, or Bass, as he's known around his home mountain at Mount Baker. I was introduced to Bass by one of our listeners, Matt Savage, so thanks to Matt for that. Bass was on Mervyn when they relaunched GNU and had an epic pro model with them for a few years. He rode Baker with guys like Craig Kelly, Tex, Dan Donnelly, Farmer, and of course Jeff Fulton. He was younger and not afraid to go big, which took a toll on his body, but let me assure you, he's still riding super fast, super loose, preferring classic shape boards like his Sims half-pipe and his version of a Terry Kidwell roundtail, which was what he was riding the day that I met up with him at Baker this year. Bass is one of those big-hearted legends who passes on the stoke to the younger generations. I met up with him at his place just outside of Glacier, Washington. Yeah, here's the interview.
My folks were actually from Chicago. They moved out here on a whim, and then I got all Northwesty. Just growing up around here. When I was in 8th grade, they tried to move back, and my grandpa was sick, and I went back with them, and I was there for probably 3 months until I realized they were trying to move back. And I was like, hold on a second. This is not my scene. Luckily, my best friend, his folks took me in. Because I was like, I'm out of here. And then my mom...
So your parents moved back?
My mom came back, but I was out of the house at 14. I really wasn't going home anymore after 12. And how old are you in 8th grade?
12, 13.
Yeah, I was out of the house.
Holy shit. Well, what are you doing? Like, how are you out of the house? Just like crashing at friends' places and... Yeah. Like, was it partying and stuff like that? Or was it just...
No, I was a really good kid. For the most part. A little bit of weed, but I wasn't into that party scene that much. It was mostly this. It was the drive to do this.
What was your first board? Where were you riding up here?
I was here at Baker. It was a 140 or a 150 Performer. The first board I stepped on was a backyard in someone's backyard. I was hooked. I was a BMX kid, like all the Mount Vernon kids from the 80s. The snowboards were in the back of the magazine, and I really didn't know about Craig or Dan or Jeff.
Because Craig would have been done with BMX before.
Yeah, well, I'd see, when I was a little kid, I'd see him at the racetrack at the park, because I would get up before school and go tool around, and that's how I met Craig, is because he had that same thing. He was up with the sun, and that's the only reason I rode bikes with him at all was because of that. So I was a little kid, and I'd see him there cruising around, and he'd give me the thumbs up, you know, as a little kid. Later in life, that's how I met him at the hill, too. Like, I didn't meet him in town, you know, we just got up on a chair. And I was like,
he was there.
Hey, dude, what's up?
Yeah.
A real dude.
Yeah, right. So were you going to the Fulton Bike Shop kind of thing? Is that...
There was the bike barn, and I actually worked at the bike barn. They were a rival shop, but not really, because they'd been there forever, and they sold Schwinn stuff, and so it wasn't like this competitive thing at all. And then once I realized they had snowboards over there, I was like, dude, I gotta check this out.
They had to be one of the first in Mount Vernon and in
I think they were the first in the area, period. Mm-hmm. They had them before Bike Works and all that stuff. You know, I wanted to get boards at Bike Barn, and they weren't into it. They opened up skate during that era, and so I switched quickly from middle teens. I had a skateboard and was, you know, I'd drop in on the ramps and stuff, but I was still BMXing. But I would grab one of my buddy's boards and just play with it. And was it BMX freestyle or just straight racing? At first it was just racing, and then got into the freestyle thing, and then that actually fit better because all the tracks were getting torn out. Right. So then I was just bouncing around my front wheel. Yeah, I remember that. Forever. I had a Hutch Trickstar. Nice. Yeah.
It was 70% off at Sears. My parents were like, oh, you want to...
Holy cow.
BMX, you've been bugging us for a BMX forever. And then I just lucked into that. I had like the ultimate BMX. But then I brought it to the real BMX community in my small town, and people just picked parts off it. Like, oh, you want to trade those nice aluminum rims for these plastic 5-stars? Oh, yeah, of course I do. And then everything was just going off it.
You got worked.
I got so worked. I was maybe 13 or 14.
I know. Yeah, making friends.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, when you're a kid, you're doing that stuff anyway. Color changes.
That's what it was.
You like the color better. You know, you don't know what the
Well, it wasn't until I was into skateboarding that it was like I would do that to somebody else. Like, you'd go to someone's house and you'd be like, ooh, look at that skateboard leaning up against a garage that's never been used.
I was so lucky because working at the shops, I was getting stuff, you know, wholesale at such a young age, and then working. I was working. So I had all the gear.
That's rad.
It was really kind of fun because my folks weren't buying me the gear, but I was definitely getting it. I'd had it, and I'd have it, you know, right away.
Right.
I had Zorlak's phone number back in the day, you know, and I cold called them when I was like 13 or 14 years old. And I'm like, hey man, I work at a skate shop and I do some of the purchasing, you know, just gave them the lingo, and they're like, you guys got to listen to this little kid, you know. And so they send me, what's your address? So they sent me this box of all the next year's twin tips. Like, they had all the rad, funky tag shape and all that cool stuff. And so all of a sudden I got this box of these twin tips, and I'm like, dude, this is nuts. You know, all stickered out. That's cool.
That is a cool thing. Like, there's this thing when you work in a shop, and if you're just like the proxy buyer, you know, there's some owner who doesn't know what's up.
Yeah.
And you read the magazines cover to cover, and you start telling them what to do. And then companies start giving you stuff. There's this line where you're like, I think I'm sponsored.
Well, you're meeting people too, and they, you know, like, if you're, you know, I get crazy about stuff and tenacious and into it, and then people realize, whoa, this guy's as messed up about this stuff as I am. A lot of that happens organically. I think people are just like, this guy's got the sickness.
Totally.
Yeah, because I mean, you know, now we're all older. You know, we went through that era where they're like, you know, your sport doesn't exist. You're cutting school for no reason. You're a loser. Cut your hair. Give it up. And you had to get some backbone. You know, you had to fight back a little bit. And so here we all are. And I love that people are talking about snowboarding getting small again and stuff. I think it's really helped the sport
I think you're right.
All the
I think
floaty shapes. I mean, it's really. I mean, the '90s killed me. You know, the first couple of years, you know, working on boards with Mervin and having, you know, carte blanche. Just okay, we're gonna build some aggressive, sick stuff here, and then realizing, whoa, these boards don't float as well. '93, I was begging for a Sims half pipe again. And then everyone cut their noses and tails off, and now the boards are 54s. And people are trying to do big stuff on them, and people were doing big stuff on them. I mean, it was nuts. It seemed like a dead zone for me because it was tough. I'm glad this board, I'm glad that trend just failed.
Like the popsicle stick, cookie cutter, everything twin.
Yeah.
You'd be riding a 54. You go into a shop and someone's like, you can't get a 57 even. It's funny when you look at the difference between a 55 and a 57. You're talking about a centimeter on each side.
Yeah.
They're the same size board.
Those boards in particular, when you talk about like an old that's a 160, that old MC.
Yeah.
But it's not.
No,
you know, it's like a 63.
Right.
You know, it's way, you know, after you rode it 2 times, the camber was gone.
Right, and that
floated.
That thing, I forget what do they call that? A 59?
Yeah.
It's like a 65.
Yeah. They'll float you, they'll hold you up.
They're nice. If there were inserts in those boards, that would be a current board.
Yeah, the shape's great. Those foam cores, though, they would blow up. That one was tougher because of the top sheet.
Yeah.
But the gyrator, we'd go through the shops and we'd snap them in half in the rack and then put them back so people wouldn't ride them.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
It was kind of fun, though, to break a board and get a new board next year.
Oh, it was great.
Yeah. Like those Joyride boards just fell apart. I can think of like 20 companies where, the Ecstasy's on the rack, you could snap an Ecstasy.
I went from the early boards with all the split tail stuff, you know, and then the first modern board that I was on was the half pipe. That's like, I consider that one the transition. It had an actual construction where it wasn't just laminated wood.
Snowboarders in Exile, the guys that are on those half pipes are ripping.
Yeah, they're killing it.
It's Roach, and there's a couple of other people that are riding.
The Western Front.
The Western Front,
When I saw the Western
that's
Front,
right.
that was the first snowboard video I didn't just make fun of. I was like, oh, wow, who's that dude? You know, that guy's actually making it happen.
That was actually my first real video aside from, you know, like Into the Snow Zone, you know, like little parts in ski movies. I didn't see any of the early Sims and Burton, like, team stuff.
All that stuff drove me nuts.
Yeah.
I was so into the skateboard scene, and I was confused why it wasn't making that transition. You know, I'd show up somewhere and everyone's wearing neon and stuff, and I'm looking at them going, dude, you guys, you know who Tony Alva is? Come on, check this out. You heard of Neil Blender? These tricks are all established. It's out there. Do a little research. You know, that's another funny thing now. Before, it's so fun to just share all this stuff so quick, instantly. You know, back then in the day, you really had to look. I mean, you had to get that video out of the back of the magazine, and
it's true.
You know, we're all trading VHS tapes and burning them up.
Somebody would call you and say, like, there's snowboarding on TV. I recorded it. Come over to my house, and then you'd watch like VHS.
Did you ever see Run Man 66?
You know what? That's so funny. I just watched the YouTube clip of it because Hetzel mentioned it.
Right.
And I was like, whoa.
I saw that and was just like, oh, dude, it's on.
Yeah, the thing about surfing was that it was so California. You know what I mean?
Yep. Well, we didn't even know we could do it here.
Yeah. No, you had no idea.
No.
Right.
We were little kids. We jumped in the river and like, we're going to the ocean. We paddled boogie boards down the mouth of the Skagit. Like, this ain't the ocean.
Yeah.
Long walk. It didn't work.
And then skateboarding was more gritty and definitely more cool. Like, it instantly became more cool.
You know, it just still is. I mean, this sport, you know, it's gotten easier now because you can just buy a board on Craigslist. You can go to a pawn shop and get good gear. You can score a pair of boots. You know, at the thrift store, you know, you can do this. I mean, it's attainable now. You know, get a couple buddies and get an old beat-up Subaru and start snowboarding and go to the hill and, you know, make your own split board. You know, I think that's changing the sport for the good, for sure, because it's about being able to actually do it. But it's still, you know, it's a winter sport. You know, skateboarding, you know, it's a board and some trucks, and you go.
It's very personal too. Like you can just you could skateboard by yourself anywhere at any time. Whereas snowboarding, you can snowboard by yourself too. It's fine. It's kind of more of a fun sort of social group sport.
Yeah, getting out in the backcountry by I'm not supposed to say that anymore. And exactly. That's my freedom when I'm out there by myself, and especially working at the hill now. I'll probably get myself in trouble, but there's nothing better. Yeah, there's nothing better than sitting on one of those peaks by yourself, and you're on your own.
Well, Baker's still this weird, isolated spot that, I know you guys, the local people down here, are bummed on how blown out it is and how busy it is, but, you go to Whistler, it makes you unhappy to be there.
Well, it's that whole, it's been purchased. They just bought their own scene, and they're up there for the weekend, and it's there's the tourist part of snowboarding that is... it's just something we have to deal with. And that's with skateboarding. That's why skateboarding's so pure, because, you take a few lumps on your skate and you're freaking done.
That's why I could get all those boards that were leaned up against somebody's
you're
garage.
Out, so you're not your average happy-go-lucky tourist that's just going to have a couple of shots and go out and get groovy. That's not happening on a skateboard.
No, you broke your arm. Now you can't go to work. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like you're badly hurt.
And those realities in the snowboard world, it comes a little farther down the line.
Yeah.
Park kids now, everyone's risking their life. That's not taking that away from the snowboarders for sure.
Right.
And it's not necessarily, this is not a good thing. It's Craig talked about, this pretty extensively. He's like, you got to have a cutoff point. You can't just smash yourself over and over and come back from that. He had that talk with me in '93. I'd been snowboarding for about 10 years, and my back was done. Nerve damage, snapped tendons, all sorts of awesome stuff. And I was just being a punk and gritting through it, and I wouldn't stop riding, and I'd ride more. I was starting to have some real physical problems, and he had a little intervention and just grabbed a hold of me, took me surfing, and so what's your game plan? I'm like, I'm just going to blow up, and then I'll be done, and I'll just surf. And he's like, you do realize you could fix yourself, and I'm like, well, yeah, sure. And then he kind of let me know that he dealt with, overdeveloping his back leg, asymmetry, having, those same nerve problems, and even to the point where, you're blacking out, twisting your spine, and you're out cold. And, hearing him say that and how articulate he was and just, forward thinking, he's like, yeah, we'll get you with a trainer. Got to change your mindset a little bit. Quit jumping off everything to flat, and it's great. It's funny. Quit doing it. It helped out a lot. Changing my perspective for sure.
That's pretty intense.
That's what's really appealing to me about the sport again is all these fun shapes. It's not like this happened yesterday. We're 8 years deep on this. I watched a little Vimeo of these kids down at Stevens. I think they were at Stevens. They pressed their own boards out of plywood, and they were surfing their brains out, ripping, one binding, no bindings, just cutting back and having a blast. I love all the death ice tricks. It's awesome. It's really cool to watch, and it's been amazing to watch the girls rocket up to the top of this stuff too.
Right?
It's like, my God, I was at the X Games a few years back, and leaving there, that's what most impressed me, was watching the girls. Back in the day, it was like the top three kind of had it going on, and were really doing some stuff, and it was just top to bottom.
Yeah.
The whole three, and they don't show the practice lines on TV, and it was just like all these young kids just killing it in this 22-foot deep ice pipe.
That's insane, dude. I don't watch the current stuff. So we were watching Red Bull TV. We stayed out at a cabin in Glacier, and I was like, wow, really? It's almost become boring, just in that it's the same thing over and over again.
Yeah.
When we started doing this in the early 90s, I can remember people saying that surfing was blown out because it was okay, how many blue waves, blue sky, guy in pink shorts.
And then on the same, on the other side of that coin, having people saying aerials are destroying the tradition of surfing.
Exactly.
And I dealt with some older surfers listening to that. And I've always thought snowboarding was going to end up where it is. I'm not saying I had real forethought on that, but I just from the skateboarding videos, I was like, this isn't about cross grabbing. You know, there's going to be a hell of a lot more going on here. You know, now it's like the no boards, it's only a matter of time before somebody's kick flipping varial 360 over the freaking road gap. It's going to happen tomorrow.
Sure.
Bodie, Merrill, you know, some of these kids are just like, dude, holy crap.
It's insane, right?
It's insane. It's sick.
It's funny, you just reminded me when I was a kid, I was like hungry for media. You didn't have that. You had to go get videos
searching.
or whatever. You were searching. So I would watch like Winter Olympics ski aerials. Because that shit blew my mind. I was like, okay, we're trying to do... Somebody's trying to do a 540 in our big contest right now, and these guys are hucking triple, whatever they were calling it, like a full.
See, they're quad corking.
Yeah.
They had it, you know, in the 70s.
I'm like, and I knew at that point, like, snowboarding's going to get to that, but it's not going to look like that, I don't think. And it didn't by the time we got there.
Yeah, now it does.
Kind of, but it's not the same. It's not that straight up and down jump with the, like, butt check landing thing.
Yeah, people are down on that right now because those kids have kind of all plateaued, and you know they keep pushing it. And
it's weird because doesn't it seem like it always keeps plateauing? Like I left the fold when it was rodeo flips. Like for me, those like McTwisty off straight jump like Misty flips, I was like, I can get on this. And then that same year, somebody's doing rodeos, and I'm like, that doesn't even make sense to me. Did he just take off on his heel edge? Wait, he took off on his toe edge, he's doing a backflip, and he's spinning back. I don't understand this. And I thought, okay, so that's as far as it's going to go. Yeah. And then they
were way beyond it.
Yeah, then doubles, and then triples, and now quads.
Yeah. No, it's that comfort. It's where you left off and where you're comfortable, and then where you want to push it.
Yeah.
And then do you have, you know, for me, you know, advancing, you know, I don't think I learned a new trick, you know, past, you know, my late 30s. But there was lots of them to learn.
It's fun when you learn one, isn't it?
Oh, man.
Like, it's like the best thing ever.
Sick. And, but we've got Nerf World here.
Oh,
so, you know, when the conditions are perfect and the hits are nice, you know, you can still pull the pin. You know, even being, you know, gosh, it's crazy working with your injuries at this point. And every year's a friggin' comeback.
Every year's a comeback.
You know, it's like, it's ridiculous.
That is true.
You know, I think that drive to not do those things when I was younger, like, really, like, there's no way. Like, I'm not going to snowboard. If I can't do a friggin' frontside 7 and land on the ice, then, you know, why would I even do this anymore? You know, and you've changed gears.
I did that in skateboarding for sure, where I just left it going, okay. There is a certain thing when you're in there with your friends and your friends, everybody's competing, and you kind of know where
pushing
you are
each other
in the pecking order, and you're kind of like, oh, I'm better than Roger, but I'm not as good as Craig or whatever. There was a point where a bunch of people passed me in skating, and I was like, fuck it, I'll just snowboard then. And I was literally trying to get better than they could get by like sneaking off and snowboarding by myself and trying to be like, okay, I'll be better than all of them. Yeah, great.
Right.
But then when Hastings was built up in Vancouver, and I saw people doing the perpetual motion for the first time, it looks like you can just go forever and ever and ever.
Northman pumping the snake run and then screaming through the bowl and coming back up.
Yeah.
When I was a kid, I got there and was like, no way.
No
possible way. And I showed up there on my bike at first. Yeah. And everything was just a freebie.
Yeah.
You got pedals, you can pump, you're going twice as fast, you're airing the hips all the way back up. And then I started skateboarding. That was my biggest challenge on a skateboard at that time. Was the first time I freaking did that on my skateboard. I was like, holy shit, that was rad. Yeah. You know, I'm kind of blind to the people that are around me doing, you know, kickflips over it. You know, I've never really had that part of. I had no competitive stuff with skateboarding. It was just a freebie. Yeah. Snowboarding, it was there. After the injuries early on, and then realizing I gotta slow this down a little bit, you know, pick and choose my battles, and then getting healthy again. Like, I think 28 to 35, snowboarding was wide open for me. And I wasn't involved in any of the industry crap.
That's nice,
I just,
right?
all of a sudden was free of it and showed up, and I was like, dude, no one beats me at this.
Nice.
Everyone's doing their thing.
Yeah.
And I'm hiking Hemis 6 times, coming in, during the bank slalom, and everyone's telling me all their stuff, and I'm like, that's great. I just won.
Yeah.
No one's beating me at this.
I see Dano up there killing it like that.
He's a great example of that too, because the intangibles that guy has, just that whole ripping through the woods, and that's one of those other things too. When you see people in their element like that, like Temple Cummings gets a lot of credit for being a rad rider, but I don't think people really know. Like, I mean, the bank slalom is great and everything, but it's a little course that you go down. Everyone's going to be within a little bit of time of each other, and Temple in the woods is something else. Yeah, that was one of my eye openers. I'd like to say it was in my early 30s there, late 30s, that I realized, I'm like, holy shit, I'm like hanging it out there to ride my lines with this dude. I was like, holy shit,
that's rad.
Yeah, he's leaving clothing on tree branches. Scary.
So your first sponsorship, did you wind up on Sims?
Nope, I didn't get on it. I would have loved to.
That was when you were doing the Proform thing and getting stuff through the shop.
Totally.
And buying like whatever board you wanted from...
Yeah, I'd probably buy 3 or 4 of those a year. Yeah, I traded a car one year for a couple. This beater Granada that I scored, and my buddy's dad was like, yeah, I just got to get this thing sold so I can buy a couple snowboards. He's like, you're going to trade that car for a couple snowboards? He's like, I'll take you down there right now and buy a couple snowboards.
And then you just get to pick them out.
I traded in the car.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so I went from there. Then the GNSs. Rank was probably my first real sponsor. He gave me probably 3 or 4 of those. I was just gutting him because I was breaking them all. And he's like, dude, call this guy. And so he gave me Chris's number at the factory. He was a super cool dude. I don't know if they sent me 6 or 8 more. And, I had the last 2. I had one that I had riveted together. I was like, dude, I just don't want to break these. They were so fun. That felt so much different. And it was so much lighter than the half pipe. But there was, the give and take. Like, you could land anything on those Sims boards. And this thing, if you weren't dead on your landing, that was the first kind of a camber board, and those were the first years that I started really like just randomly going over the nose and trying to figure it out. And then right after that, GNU was around, and I bought a few GNUs, got some GNUs on Proform. They had really good concept boards. They were great. And then Windline did their manufacturing and just worked them over.
Yeah,
those boards were unrideable.
Completely.
We rode them for a year and a half maybe, a year and then half a season.
Yeah.
And then I went back to my half pipes because they were brutal. I mean, they were killing us. They made us stronger. If you didn't die, if it didn't kill you, it definitely made you stronger. And then Lib came out and was like, holy shit, these are so fun. And it was kind of a mix. It was kind of a really good combo of that GNS and that half pipe. All those boards all existed at the same time. And then we just kind of, up here, me and my buddies got our hands on them kind of that same year.
How did you get on Merlin?
I just was riding a bunch. I just kept meeting the dudes. Northwest Series.
That Northwest Series did a lot for a lot of people. Hey?
Yeah, I mean we were all kind of there. So if you could ride it, those guys were going to give you. They were going to give you a snowboard for sure. They were cranking them out. And Lib was super fun, for sure.
Yeah, your board was fun too. So that was the year I moved out west. So that's '93.
That thing was pretty cool. It was I was on Lib, just no pro model, just riding. And they're like, well, we want to give you a model with GNU. And I was like, screw that.
That was the first GNU Pro model, right?
I don't know.
The General Joe was sort of a pro model, but not really.
Yeah, I'm not sure if they would call the Pharaoh or something before that. Because I was riding a Pharaoh. My Pharaoh was a prototype, so I'd probably say the Pharaoh was before.
Right, but that's not a pro model for anybody.
Well, it's Paul Pharaoh.
Oh, the Pharaoh was for Paul Pharaoh. Okay,
I
didn't know that.
Yeah.
Who would the Dukester have been?
That was Temple.
Really?
Yeah, that's who that board was.
Oh my
Dookie.
God.
Yeah, they called him Dookie.
That's
but
amazing.
Paul's an unreal snowboarder. Absolutely.
He won the this bank slalom that year or the next year or something.
Yeah, he did. Yeah,
when there was a lot of animals up there after it, too.
Yeah, totally. He had some serious smoothness. Dude could go big, too.
That was the thing about Mervyn was like, oh, these guys all
well, they were all real snowboarders. That's why I had their back. You know, it was like, these guys are, you know, they're really doing this. There wasn't, that money thing hadn't happened to those guys. You know, they were
still flying by the seat of their pants.
Building snowboards because they were snowboarders.
Yeah.
You know, it was really a cool thing.
So your board had that clear sidewall with
that was
writing and stuff on it?
I wanted urethane. I wanted urethane, and I wanted the boards to be super damp. It's something I'm still into.
That's rad.
I want to run into shit and not fall down.
Yeah, nice.
So yeah, that was a really cool deal, and it was kind of tricky. It was really tricky to make it work, and when it got cold, like Utah and stuff, it didn't work. I mean, those edges,
the urethane stuff.
Yeah,
did they crack or something?
It just exploded, shattered glass. But
we never had any of that in Vancouver because
no,
it get that cold.
Here we were fine, but you know, all the boards from the colder regions, all that stuff would break. The shape was super fun.
Did you design that whole thing?
I mean, Mike definitely had the templates and everything set up, but you know, I was like, I want it to be this length. I want gnarly 8-meter side cut. I want this thing to just be stupid.
What was the big? Okay, so the big black bass was 69.
It was 72.
72. Oh yeah.
And then the other one was 60 to 64.
Oh yeah, I forgot they put a range
on the
that
grind.
year. Yeah, they put a range on
grind it.
That was so dope that they were doing that.
That was a lot of fun. And that board now, when I look at it, it's just like, you know, once I rode it for a couple of years, I'm like, this thing's messed up. Like, in powder, it's huge. It's, you know, it's tricky to deal with. The big dudes liked them for sure. They finally had something under them that would hold them up. I'm just glad everything's gone back to the Sims half pipe. I'm so grateful.
When you think of the big black bass, it's just a giant twin. You're kind of wasting a bit of shape there for a big board unless you were a giant freestyle rider.
It's so fun when you're like on hard pack and there's side hits and rollers and that kind of stuff, and then it gets deep and you can't get far enough back.
Yeah.
You know, and that's like a lot of boards from that era. And that was one of the first ones.
Yeah.
You know, Craig's boards, there's a lot more thought into that low-rise nose. Him coming from Sims, you know, he integrated a lot of that stuff into those Burton boards, which is, you know, really hard to do.
You know what the crazy thing is that when I was talking with Brad Stewart about it, it all clicked and made sense to me. Craig leaving Sims was literally bad for Sims. Like, the suing Craig thing, they didn't do it right, but they had a case. There was no incentive for Sims to pay him any money.
Craig was so engineer-minded that he knew what worked and why, and that was definitely a big loss for those guys.
Oh, huge
to have that. Well, the craziest thing about that is to have, you know, Jake's really smart because he listened to Craig about ideas, and I don't think it's a rip-off. I think it's just an understanding of what works.
Totally.
And if you're Jake and you have the snowboard company, you're already moving forward, and you hire this guy that you think is intelligent, but you know, to actually listen to all of his ideas and the subtleties, you know, the shapes of his tails to sink down, you know, just little things like that, and just go, okay, yeah, whatever, kid, you know, knock yourself out. And then to step on those boards now, it's really fun. Like I've got some riders over there in the corner that, you know, I'm going to be riding this winter because they're still really good. You know, it's just kind of a trip. That's a fun thing for me nowadays too, is just to get on those, because you get on those old boards and it kind of takes you back.
Yeah, you know, have to ride that way.
That same feeling. I got grief at the Sims deal because I've got my stance moved, but I used to drill those. You know, I was drilling them in the 80s.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, on the counter.
Yeah, we would drill them. Yeah, my Craig board was drilled.
It was a good deal.
Because you had to, because otherwise you could only get a 16 or 17 inch stance.
Yeah, I'd go to 21 and a half, and the techs in the shop are like, there goes your warranty, and tear it up and throw it in the garbage.
Yeah. Also, when you think back to those early days of, because Chuck Barfoot's design on that barfoot that you have there, that's a modern design. It was ahead of its time. You know what I mean?
You go back, it's hard to find any junk. It all worked, and if you start getting into the specifics, it all does something well.
Yeah.
The three main brands here were Mervyn, Sims, and Burton. The little bickering and the little comments that would kind of come through. Because by 90, I rode the 94 boards that came out in 93, and it was basically a Jamie Lynn. We ride similar. I know it goes big, especially when it's hard out. That dude doesn't shut it off when the snow gets hard.
I know. I rode behind him in 94, 95 down the canyon. He's riding by himself. There's nobody watching.
Yeah.
He's got no incentive to go big, and he's
like turned up,
blasting. Like I've never seen anyone do it that big.
On. That dude just on.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter what the snow conditions are like.
That's crazy.
He's just on.
And he wasn't getting hurt. Like I felt like if I was doing that, I would crash and die.
He's a tough dude.
Yeah.
That is one tough dude.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's kind of a Marshawn Lynch of snowboarding.
Yeah.
He's a tough dude.
Yeah.
The 94 boards came out, and it was that nose getting shaved off.
Yeah.
54, you couldn't sell a board unless it was 54 or under.
Yeah.
So a lot of these boards were smaller.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a 52, and all of a sudden, I'm getting bigger. I'm going from 165 to 180. Transitioning from a kid, and I can't do this. And I'm like, fuck these things. And so I started buying Burton Customs.
Yep.
And
they're bigger ones like that.
I had a couple of 59s, and then I had a 55. I had the ADEX, and then I started working for Craig's Camp about that same time.
Yeah.
And so then I met some of the Burton guys there and started doing that transition. I started to really like those boards a lot.
The customs with that with the V core.
Yeah. Well, all of them.
Yeah.
Like the cheap series on through. Like my last couple of Mervyn boards are actually Terriers numbers. That's what those boards are.
Right.
And we just kind of bumped them up a little bit.
That's so dope.
They ground them different. They were totally sick. I was like, this is really good math.
Yeah, they were doing really good things in those early 90s. Hey, early through mid 90s.
Yeah, I think those are the best riding boards from that era for sure.
Well, they reissued the Terrier and the Brushy, and basically they don't have to change anything.
No, they're killer.
They're still current boards, especially with what's going on now with people wanting a little more shape to their board.
Stuff is so fun now. The Capita stuff. Option, I think, was probably the best built board during that late 90s.
Yeah, you couldn't break them.
They just figured it out.
They pretty well.
Vinson, I don't know if you remember that one.
I remember the Vinson.
It was just that was the first board I had that I didn't break.
You couldn't break that thing.
Yeah, I was like, holy shit, I had a board for a whole season.
Yeah.
I sold it.
Yeah.
I was like, oh my God, that's impossible. You can't do that. So that really started to change snowboarding. I think the availability for people, because it's like, dude, these things are, back then they were $400, $385. You're gonna buy 4 of these? Barely. Now they're, $650.
People don't break boards now. I don't think. I don't see them breaking boards
they do
as much.
Baker. These kids here sure do.
Yeah, I guess. Right. What am I talking about? I don't break boards. Is what it comes down to.
Yeah, it's the snow. It's this damn snow here. Just you tumble going 30, and you do one of those reverses. It just
just snaps it.
You leave your nose behind you somewhere.
Okay, listeners, I'm interrupting to tell you about two great companies that support the show, Wired Snowboards and the Boardroom Snowboard Shop. Before I even say anything, I'm going to call on you guys to go to their Instagrams and follow those guys and leave a comment that you heard about them from the show. That'll help me out big time. Okay, boardroomsnowboardshop.com. It's a Vancouver-based retailer of all things snowboarding. They guarantee the lowest price. They guarantee the quality of everything that they have. And they even guarantee that you're going to like what you buy. That's a crazy guarantee. You can save 10% off regular priced items by entering offer code FNRad10 at checkout, or save 5 off on sale goods with FNRad5 at checkout. Also, go to wiredsnowboards.com and buy a board. I'm really excited to tell you guys, I got my Chase 162 and I've been riding it pretty much every day. Vancouver's been getting snow, and if you don't have a POW board in your quiver, I don't know what you're doing. I don't know what I've been doing for the last 30 years of my life. This is my first dedicated POW board. It's got a low rise, it's got a V-tail. It's perfect. I ride faster, smoother, I land bigger drops, and I'm way less tired at the end of the day. It's insane. It has really upped my POW game. I would recommend it to anybody who's looking for a powder board. Also, I have a Directive 157. I've been talking about that all year. I ride that in the park. It's fucking phenomenal. Okay, you can save 10% off at checkout with the code word FNRad. Listeners, go follow Wired Snowboards on Instagram. Leave them a message that you heard about Wired Snowboards from the FNRad podcast. I'll pick one of you at random and send you some Vans stuff, courtesy of Mike Strato and Vans Canada. Okay, back to the show.
Working at the hill and then getting out on the hill with kids. I mean, people, back in the day, that was my favorite thing to do, was take a California photographer or somebody and then just strand them on a cliff. And that meant way more to me than getting a shot in the Mac. Not a real good approach. But now, as coaching, again with Craig had such a good approach to everything. And then I got to work at the camp, and then getting to work with the kids, and it was so fun. And so now working at the hill and having these kids wanting to go out and explore stuff. They're from all over the place.
Everywhere, yeah.
Those are my favorite kids that, maybe they didn't grow up here, and they're just here, they're here for their third year, and they're getting their feet under them, and and their eyes are starting to open up to some of this really cool stuff, and then getting them safely into fun little zones where they can see, some real zones, and start working from there.
Yeah.
That's been a lot of fun.
Okay, so you were in the MBHC technically.
No.
You're going to say no? No. I think people would put you in there.
Well, yeah, I'm sure they would, but it's not true. Craig and Dan and all those guys were a little bit older, and we were just punks, and we were oi, and we were trying to differentiate, ourselves from, I had skate attitude, so for sure it was, button heads and, not on a serious level, but, being up there and thinking we were real freaking cool. Is basically how you boil that down. And those guys just going, no, man, you're not that cool. And now, now that we're older, that's really freaking fun. It's great stuff. Craig and Dan were, definitely mentors in a lot of, well, trial by fire.
Yeah.
Get you loose in the corner on the way down the hill or up the hill and then on the hill, and so survival. Yeah, riding the chair with those guys back then, it was like just dropping out of a BMX starting gate. It was just on. You're clicking, edges are clicking, and you're in chutes and messed up places where you shouldn't be doing stuff like that. And it was on.
It's a pretty small resort for
Yeah, they see you. They're coming for you, or and we were dumb enough to go after them. It was great.
That's super rad.
Yeah, it's fun. Jeff's been there at every turn. Fulton's been just part of the sport, and part of Baker, part of Craig's camps. He's just been there for all this stuff. And I always gauged, I was like, because everyone's telling you can't do this. This isn't something for adults, and this isn't a real sport. And watching Jeff kind of just push through all that, and he did. He really did.
He's so smooth too. I picked him out just like he was just riding groomer runs, and I was like, "But that's a person that's above."
Yeah, he's got some skills.
His skill level
very refined,
very refined. Just like even just making a turn, it's like that was a really beautiful turn.
Yeah, and being in zones like you'd get out there. You sometimes I'd forget. I was like, because Jeff he's just in cruise mode, and I'd get out onto some steeps or something with him, and just drops the bottom out, and off he goes, and it's like he's anywhere else.
It's incredible,
just really cool.
And so he's really excited that you guys are going to do, like a pseudo pro model with him.
Yeah,
his first pro model, technically.
I don't know about that.
Yeah, I think that's it. I don't think anyone's done a Fulton board.
Really?
Yeah.
That's cool.
In all the board sports, it's very rare that those quieter, smooth dudes get their due. Every once in a while, there's a Jerry Lopez or someone who just not a boisterous, over the top. That's just so good. That people are like, well, that guy. Fulton's, everybody knows him. You know, like Mount Hood in the mid '90s, he was the man. And
at all the camp. Yeah, he was at every camp down there too, holding it down.
Yeah,
you know, and riding every day. Yeah, there's that whole longevity thing. You know, some of the people that are coming back to the sport now, they took 10 years off. You know, that are from that era, and you know that's not the case. I mean, this place kind of gets in your blood a little more than.
I think you're right.
The industry aspect of it, you know, it was nice from our era because we were kind of removed from it. You know, you had to go to California.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you didn't have that California infection, you know, you're on the outskirts of it, and you know, snowboarding could still save you. The actual sport that you're trying to do could save you from being involved in this whole hype machine that just was kind of a whole nother thing.
Yeah, it's insane. Damian Sanders didn't ride the last 2 years that he was sponsored.
Yeah, that's another one of those things where it's like, okay, you know, his knees were annihilated. I mean, the dude was just going so big.
Yeah, remember
plastic, dude, his gear. Oh. If you put those boots on one of those boards with those bindings, it probably weighs twice of what any of this gear weighs. You know, so he was like pendulating himself, you know. And the guy was going absolutely.
You know what did his knees in, though? The dagger and soft boots.
Probably too late.
And he couldn't go as big, and when he tried, it was just too loosey-goosey.
Yeah.
And the board had too much side cut. That part I'm putting
convinced of.
Because I remember that board just being almost unrideable.
Right.
And he was saying, kind of like what you were saying, once you'd ridden the first Gadoo ironing boards for a year.
Yeah.
Give me back my old board.
Yeah.
It rides well.
Yeah.
Like he would have.
I can't do shit on this thing.
If he could still ride a kick, he probably would have been more motivated to keep riding.
I think you're probably right. Yeah, I mean it's.
He said it. Yeah.
Yeah, I believe that. It makes sense.
The
hard boots got so, you know, people were beating him up so hard,
so bad.
And I was on the forefront of that.
Sure.
You know, I didn't want anything to do with those things in our sport. You know, it's a funny attitude to have, but it was that whole relating to the ski thing. But what the guy was doing was just friggin' nuts.
You go back and watch, and it's like, I don't think, like, okay, so you've mentioned Alaska. You work up there every year?
The last 2 years are the first years I haven't been up since 2000.
Oh, wow. And do you see Parada up there at all?
No.
Okay, because he's on that tip. He's still...
The places I've worked up there are just total, like, out in the middle of nowhere. After you land from the airport, you know, you're an hour fly in, and, you know, I've just been super remote. Just me and bears, really. So, obviously, I never got to see any of those guys from that era that are, you know, stayed up there and are fishing guides and stuff. I'd love to see Parada.
I bring him up because he was stomping cliffs in that era. Guys hit big cliffs now today for sure, but there's this calculation of these, like, but they go and they build a booter and it's a 5-day process, and it's, you know what I mean. Whereas those
throw
guys
a snowball and go.
Yeah, those guys might do a line.
If your snowball,
there's 2 big cliffs in it, you know what I mean?
That was all you did. You'd make a snowball and you throw it.
I'm going there.
And
I'm going to
don't throw it too hard. You're throwing it at the same speed that you're going to go.
Yeah.
And then go.
And I think, you know, that's one place where snowboarding didn't, you know, evolve like it has with these quad corks, is like just like sick cliff drops.
No, I think that came from, you know, Tahoe and here, just because of the conditions. I think that started earlier.
Yeah,
because it was just, it's doable. You know, we spent all of our time, you know, we didn't hit a lot of jumps. There's not a lot of jumps at Baker.
Right.
You know, we're drop farmers. We all were dropping off everything and doing, you know, rotating like crazy. 7s on that early onset was probably the max out. You know, Jamie was the first person I saw doing 9 anywhere. You know, tiny little boards. That dude makes that work. He likes the short, wide little boards, and it's great that that's what they're doing now. Is they've got these super fun little the mayhem shape.
Yeah, you see those things?
They're sick.
Yeah, and
that's kind of it's an extension of his. It's a little more surfy version of his super aggressive 90s stuff. It's a cool transition. The biggest thing that I like about those boards is dudes with big feet. They're often running.
Yeah.
You've got no toe drag all of a sudden and no swing weight.
Yeah.
You can just go out and throw the thing around.
I followed Farmer down just right under Tier 5, and he was crushing it on like a 146. Farmer, who usually would be up here on a 188 or
the other spectrum. Yeah, he was landing in the middle of a 200, and it was like hitting him in the teeth and the back of the head at the same time.
Oh, yeah. That was fun to see. That's a guy who's got that fire for it.
Yeah. Well, Sean, Farm was one of the most athletic dudes that, like, Tex too. Like, those guys, they're bigger dudes. Sean's a little smaller than Tex, but they had all the rotations and stuff. And, for big dudes, it was kind of crazy. We'd be cruising down in the hips, and, Sean would throw a flip. And you're like, oh, shit, because you forget. You're like, Sean just jumps off huge shit. And there he is upside down right in front of you, turn, because you're going to freaking hit him. Those guys transitioning onto those big, long boards, and then just flying, turning into snowboard flyers. Andy Johnson and Teal, they showed up and were real, like, that's when Farm and Tex were really just jumping off of everything around here. And then those guys, like, pulled the pin on some rad shit. That was a cool era. And those big, a 170 is where I max out.
Me too.
Those guys get on a 185, and
I've ridden a 202 or whatever, and it's a chore.
You're just hanging on.
Yeah.
It's you get that flow part of it. You got to be a bigger dude for sure to make that work.
Yeah, that's fun. Like, I'd like to talk about Damage Incorporated for sure. How do people get it? Is there a website? Is there?
It's top secret.
It's top secret, so I won't be putting it out there.
Yeah. I did this right after Mervyn. And it was the era, like all manufacturing got shipped overseas, like as soon as I started going. And I got going, and the first year I did 100 boards, and they were just gone. And I didn't get shipped till after Christmas, and I was like, wow, that worked really well.
Perfect.
So then the next year, all of a sudden I had investors kind of chiming in my ear, and I'm like, okay. So now I'm at 300, 450. Yeah. And now this is kind of a scary amount of money.
It is.
And I went down and was going to get into production, and I was using the same guys that were sublimating Mervyn's top sheets. They weren't doing their own sublimation at the time. So I was down in Auburn, and there's two of the dudes. And one of the guys leaves the room to go get the bill. And the other guy is like, we might be out of business tomorrow. I don't know if we're going to be able to pull this off. So be really careful if you actually write that check, because we're going under.
Wow. And
I was like, dude. And the other guy comes back in the room, and he's like, all right, the bill's going to be. And I backed away.
Yeah.
And sure enough, they were gone.
Oh, wow.
And that guy.
So that could have been just like money.
That would have been just so devastating at that point in my life. And so then I went up to the A-Star, and I was like, all right, I need to talk to these guys about, because they were in Mount Vernon. This was really handy again. It was all of a sudden there's a snowboard factory in my backyard, and they were They were making big 5 boards. And I was like, with my background, I was like, hey, I can order some better top sheet materials and show you guys how to lay up some better stuff. And, the guys there had done that, but they were making these cheap $85 boards. And I was like, well, let's get that up to 210 and have a real snowboard. And here we go, and we're going to do that. And I show up, and the place is like crickets. There's nobody there. And I'm like, dude, what's going on? Same things like, dude, we're going to be out of business tomorrow. Hey, you got your truck? I'll sell you one of those presses.
Sick.
And I'm like, dude. He's like, yeah, but you want a crazy amount of money. And I'm like, I'm getting back on a fishing boat.
Yeah.
And so damage just died. I was like, okay, I've had a long time to think about this, and if I ever do this again, it's going to just stay real small and tight. This is a kid from my high school that always wanted to do a graphic on a snowboard.
That's dope.
And he just killed it.
Yeah, it looks great.
There's no team. They're the lifer kids. They got to have a job.
Nice.
I'm not going to come up to some kid that's a burner that thinks he's going to make a career out of this. It's like, dude, you got a job.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is... So that's kind of the mindset with it. It's just a little fun.
See, that's the thing that keeps snowboarding rad. I've been through like a lot of eras of just, but it's always stayed the same. I would prefer to have that new cool thing, but from like some small company.
With Damage, you know, I work with Burton a little bit. I get half a dozen Burton boards a year from them, and then I just hand them out to kids.
Oh, that's so cool.
That want to ride them.
Yeah.
They trade them all around all throughout the year, and they all give me feedback on them. And some of them are like, dude, I love this, and some of them are like hardcore, you know, Mervin or hardcore Capita or whatever their scene is. They're not doing that eye-opener with like, well, this board does this. And so that's been a lot of fun. And at the end of the year, like this year, they had a big party down at Sahali, and the kids that were ripping, they didn't know I was going to do this. I just handed them out.
Oh, that's so dope.
You know, and they're just like, okay. You know, they're college students and travelers. And so it's been really fun to be able to do that. And there's a couple small, like there's this full bag company that I want to buy one of his boards and get it out here because he's just a small little dude. He's an old slalom skateboard racer guy.
Right. Like Henry Hester. You know Henry Hester was that, eh?
That's one of his boards.
Oh, that's
G&S back there.
Yeah.
So he, this full bag guy is just a monster. And so he's into that too. And his boards are all for big giant guys. You know, so I want to try to I've got this kid out here that's always like, dude, I want to ride your Damage board. I'm like, no, you weigh 300 pounds. Your fucking feet are this big. Knock it off, Rusty. Get away from the fragile little snowboards. You need a man board.
You need something ginormous. That's rad.
Like Signal's got that rent to own thing. Like you send them, I'm going to get one and see if it survives the lodge.
Sure.
And I'm just going to, hey kids, here you go.
That's hilarious.
Get 2 days
awesome.
on it.
Yeah.
Pass it around. It's Dave Lee, you know.
Dave's awesome.
Yeah.
I haven't interviewed him. I'd really like to interview him. I interviewed Todd Schlosser.
Oh, cool.
He's such a dude, man.
That guy, he is so funny. He is one of the most unique riders I can't believe that he got shuffled out. It was another hard. Pete's tough to deal with, and I think their personalities clash, but like stylistically and stuff, that dude was on a level of anybody.
He had 2 or 3 years where he was like in all the top movies. He was the voice of TV5.
Fuck, you go ride
coming down the mountain.
You go ride with him, and you're like, Jesus, kid.
Yeah, those guys used to come up to Canada a lot.
Yeah,
and ride with Devin and the Seymour kid guys a lot, and you would see
Devin.
Yeah,
Devin's unbelievable.
Yes, do you know Dow? Rob's doing boards.
I know his name. What's the name of that company?
Wired. He was working with
They were great.
Endeavor. Yeah.
They're great boards.
He's got a little factory. You should come up to Vancouver and check it out.
Oh, no shit.
It's really, really cool, and you should check it out for sure. That's the board I'm going to ride this year because he worked for Option for years.
Uh-huh. Yeah, those boards made a big impression on me. I was like,
yeah, they're rad.
I can't break this.
That's the most important thing.
It felt bad. I was like, I'm getting old and worthless.
Special thanks to Jason Basarich. Thanks, Bass. It was rad talking with an amazing snowboarder whose heart's still in it all the way. FNRad shoutouts this week to Lars Horstman for his super positive feedback on the show and for linking me up with a future guest. Thanks, Lars. Quick shout out to Tribute Board Shop and potentially something cool coming down the pipes with them. Be sure to come back next week for another episode of the FNRad Snowboarding Podcast, brought to you by Bike Room Productions.